Speaker of the House Mike Johnson joins me now. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for joining us today. Just a short distance from Capitol Hill over here at the D.C. studio. Do you have any reaction to that? Your thoughts on Hegseth versus potentially DeSantis in the defense role?
Well, I talked to Pete about 36 hours ago, and he was feeling pretty positive, pretty good about it. We were talking about people that he might select to help him in the Department of Defense. Look, we support the president. I mean, he has made some really strong nominations. He needs people who will come in and, let's be frank, shake up the status quo. And the Department of Defense needs some reform. We all know that. And Pete, I think, would do a good job at that. So I'm cheering for him.
So in order to carry out the president's agenda, you have to first win the speaker vote on January 3rd. Will you be asking Elise Stefanik to stay in place through that date to make sure that there are no hitches in that?
Yeah, I think both she and Mike Waltz will be in the chamber. They will leave after all of that happens, sometime in January. So we'll have the sufficient votes, and we'll get this done, and we'll move forward. We have a lot to do. We're going to have a very aggressive first 100 days agenda. The election gave us a mandate, gave President Trump and the Republican Party a mandate to fix everything. So we got to start on day one to do that.
Yeah, fixing everything is a heavy lift, and you got a lot of cats to herd up there.
Yes.
But in terms of the mandate, you know, you see the mandate in the White House. You see a strong mandate in the Senate. Yours is wobbly, 1 or 2 votes come January. Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, says you don't have a mandate. Watch this.
Despite the claims of some of my Republican colleagues who have spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks talking about some big, massive mandate, I'm looking for it. This notion of some mandate to make massive far-right extreme policy changes, it doesn't exist.
What do you say to that?
Yeah. I say we're going to restore common sense, and there's clearly a mandate. President Trump put a big mandate out there, and he delivered the big vote. We won the Senate with 53 votes. The House would have a larger majority, but redistricting and gerrymandering in the blue states made that almost impossible. But we do have the majority. We know how to govern with that small majority. We've been doing it for a year. We will fill those seats. There'll be 3 vacant when we start, so it'll go from 220 to 217. That is razor thin, but it'll only be for a few months. And we're very confident that we'll get qualified governing conservatives put back in those seats, and we'll grow that margin as we go.
So we're going to talk more about cutting spending in the next segment. But in terms of priorities for the first 100 days, here is John Thune, your counterpart in the Senate, talking about what he sees as the priorities this morning on America's Newsroom Watch.
In order for us to be successful here, we have to be unified coming out of the gate. The key is getting the things that he campaigned on, the border, energy dominance, national security, rebuilding our military, extending the Trump tax cuts. Those are all things in the end that we have to accomplish. How we get there is what we're discussing.
So in terms of the first thing on the agenda, he said border first. Then he said defense spending. When you spoke at the stock exchange, you put extending the Trump tax cuts as number 1. We've heard from Ron Johnson as well. Extending the tax cuts, we can handle that a little bit down the road. What is first for you?
These are all big priorities. We have to do them all early in the Trump administration because we'll have the largest tax increase in U.S. history all at once. I mean, trillions of dollars by the end of the year if we don't get the Trump tax cuts extended. So everybody that you've just named knows that's a big priority, but also border and also all these other things. Energy policy, we want to maintain peace through strength again, restore that principle.
Will you and Thune and President Trump say, okay, here we go. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. And do you have that order yet?
Yes. Look, we designed a playbook. Let me use my football metaphors, okay? We worked on a playbook for about a year, so we have the menu of options in front of us. Leader Thune and I, John and I, were talking as recently as within the last hour about the priority of how we do it and what sequence. So the sequence is less important than the idea that we actually put those points on the board. And we will, and everybody's excited. I spent an hour yesterday with all the Senate Republicans in their conference when they were getting together to talk about the issues. And we're very, I think, dialed in, all of us, on having a bicameral approach. So we'll have the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans working as one team. What a concept. And unified government with President Trump in the White House will actually be able to accomplish all this for the American people. And everybody's excited to get going.
So what's number 1 on the list?
Well, look, you got to put border at the top of the priority list. We all agree on that. And the question is, how much of that can we get in the early, right out of the gates, and how much of it needs to be a couple of months down the road in terms of the sequence? Remember, the Senate is also going to be very deeply involved in confirmations of all these cabinet appointees and everybody else. So it's clock management, using my game analogy.
Is it going to be HR2? I know Jordan has said, let's just do it right away. As an opener.
Well, so we'll be doing the budget reconciliation process as a
Right.
big chunk of the first 100 days, and there are some limits on what you can do with regard to policy. I love H.R. 2. We're going to take as much of that as we can and put it into that process. The reason we use budget reconciliation is it only requires 51 votes in the Senate, not the 60-vote threshold. So we'll get as much of that done as we can in the early part. And then as the Congress goes further, we'll do other pieces. But we've got a lot to do, a big
So what's your
agenda.
estimate? How many days before you can pass H.R. 2 and have a border bill done?
Well, if we all get on the same page, I think we could get that done very soon. I think first maybe 15 days, really, for the border provisions. We'll probably have 2 reconciliation packages, and what we're doing right now is discussing what goes in which piece of that. So it hasn't been totally decided yet.
Okay. We will be right back with more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.